Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CRC. We are happy to be here today with Travis Higginbotham. We've been showing you a lot of research through the past few months, and I thought it could be a good opportunity to switch over and see what's going on, in the market, specifically in this case, California, where Travis is located, and just talk about a few things. Travis and I go way back. We were both at Clemson. I was in grad school, he was in undergrad, and we were both working under Dr. Faust. So, gosh, 2010 maybe? Something like
a while. Yep.
And he's had experience everything from working with Fluence, with R&D, working with ornamental growers, hemp, and now at StateHouse. And so I'll let him give a more detailed introduction of himself, but we really want to touch on some things of what's going on in real life in the industry. And Travis is very happy to share, unlike many companies. So it is a treat to have him here today to spill the beans.
Awesome. No, thank you for that, Allison. Yeah, no, happy to be here. Love what y'all are doing at the CRC, and I'm glad StateHouse is part of your partners. So yeah, my background, as Allison said, really started working with Jim and Allison at Clemson. I kind of entered horticulture, not having too much of a horticulture background until working with them. So I'm very thankful for what I learned from learning for both Jim and Allison, and I'm glad that we're continuing to do this together even today. Worked in ornamentals before getting into cannabis, specifically focused on genetic selection, working with big box retailers, some of the larger growers here in this country. And then took on a role with Fluence, leading their global technical support team, which was a wild ride all over the world, working with different cannabis growers. Saw a lot of interesting things, a lot of good and bad, and that's just part of how this industry's matured. And was able to have the pleasure of working with Allison and her family at the hemp mine for some time. Learned a great deal about the hemp industry doing that. And then took this role here at StateHouse, leading cultivation for now this conglomerate of Harborside, Sublime, Loudpack, and Urban Leaf. StateHouse is the largest single state operator in California. We have about 16 retail stores and touch about 600 wholesale accounts. 230,000 square foot of greenhouse cultivation here in Salinas and Greenfield. And man, is it a challenging market right now. And it has been for a while, like Allison's pointed out. And I'll just maybe give a little background on my experience in the market, or at least this year.
Yeah. Tell us about the market in general, and kind of what you've experienced, especially going from when you first started there in California, it was one company, and then it was a conglomerate of three, and what that transition looked like, and how that played out.
Yeah, no, sure. I think most mergers have a success rate of 2 to 4%, and so us trying to combine four was a daunting task. And we've been doing this now, merging these companies for over a year. I think our anniversary had to be last week or the week before. And it's been exciting. It's been challenging. But we're at a place now where, it's all uphill, and the market seems to be getting a little better here in California. But when I started, I believe back in April of 2021, I guess, the prices here on the market were, we were selling a pound of biomass, or flour rather, for $1,600. And then, it's fluctuated as low as dropping to $500 for that same premium pound. And then we now are getting back up into the $850, $950 range. And during that whole time, growers have been dropping like flies here in the state. And I hate to say it as candidly as that, because these are people's businesses, but I think here in Salinas alone, we've had close to 2 million square feet go out of business in the past 18 months. And then,
due to the low price.
Yes. Yeah, and people not being able to manage their cost in order to make ends meet.
What do you think's pushing that cost?
I think it's there's a lot of burdens associated with regulations and things, which obviously have a huge impact. But I think it's operators' experience in managing at scale crop production, in a market where you truly have to be efficient with your energy and your labor and understand how to push this crop so that ultimately your yield can dilute that cost so that you can stay in business. And I think a lot of growers are just they've gotten to a point with where the prices have gone to where they may not have the expertise. And in some cases, for some of those that just needed to have a buffer of capital, they can't even find that capital right now. And so, I really feel for a lot of growers, and I know a lot have been, really working to try and get through this. I will say that the weather here in California for the first quarter has been rough. I don't think the state has seen this amount of rain in a given period in over 20, 30 years, at least. If we just look at our weather station Priva data, light levels throughout all of Q1 have been reduced 40% compared to last year, just looking at DLI. And we've seen that in yields, of course. I'm hearing kind of horror stories of productions getting flooded out, fields getting contaminated with runoff, and that probably reducing the amount of field product available in the fall, which is all influencing possibly this price going back up right now. It's industry's a constant wild ride, but I think that we're poised to stay here and focus on what matters and be able to work with you and continuously improve as we have. So
yeah, that's what we love to hear, is helping with that efficiency and protocols that can just equate to money savings for farmers like you.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, when you first got there, and I imagine there could be a lot of answers here, but maybe narrow it down to 3. What were the first things you kind of nipped in the butt, as far as processes that weren't efficient, or just maybe some old school mindsets around certain things? What were your top approaches?
Yeah, great question. So the first was how olive production was just scheduled in general. I have a strict rule now that I feel a facility on a square foot basis should turn no less than 5.7 times a year, and with the right genetics, you could do it more. And so we were turning roughly 4 times a year, and so we just turned the system into a perpetual schedule, while at the same time, if you're not careful, you have big ebbs and flows with costs when you don't have a consistent schedule. And so we were able to kind of manage those costs, implement this perpetual schedule, and then better even manage drying because we had less biomass to dry more frequently instead of significant amounts of biomass at a given time. And so that really helped just kind of streamline, get things into a constant flow with the facility. And then we were able to dive into, okay, why are we growing 48 genetics here? This is not efficient. We have no consistency, in average yields. It's, let's narrow this down, pick out performers, and then build in new varieties after we make some breeder partners in the future. And so that's been a big focus for me. And then, kind of the things that you guys have offered us with the CRC in relation to focusing on losses and propagation, and some of the things around, proper training of the plant to increase premium to small ratio and reduce plant count. We're starting to implement all of those things to help better manage cost and touch points. And then obviously things like fertilizer that were excessively applied and not even discussed on a parts per million basis, and just looking at, EC and ratios of tank A and B and things that just made no sense, figuring all that out. And so, yeah, it's a continuous improvement is the name of the game. So.
Fantastic. So I know a lot of growers don't get this opportunity, and I think it's a very smart one, and great that you can have this. And so you have your own R&D section, right? And so tell us a little bit about that and what you focus on. And, it can certainly lead into some of the things we've been able to plan to do in the future. And maybe we can jump into that a little bit.
Okay, great. No, Allison, I think you and I have a few things in common, with the course of our career and who we've worked with, to have a significant appreciation in R&D to guide production and to guide business. And I've come to truly value that more so than a lot of other things. And we thankfully have the support here at StateHouse to invest in an R&D program specifically for cultivation. Have an R&D team, Rachel, who also comes from Jim's lab, as well as I think Brian Jackson at NCSU. And then she has a few team members on her team. But we have close to 17,000 square feet of greenhouse for her to run trials in and manage 4 breeder partners right now with a trialing program. And then we also have 2 controlled environment chambers in Greenfield at the Loud Pack facility. We converted all of their kind of nursery chambers and things over to R&D chambers. And so we're starting to do projects now with the CRC, like you mentioned, and then with other groups. And so it's really helping us have that true continuous improvement showing of production and performance. Without it, I wouldn't be able to answer questions. We'd be probably stuck with certain issues, and this helps me identify things, address it, run it, trial it, make a decision, and change. And without it, I don't see cannabis growers staying in business without having that mindset. And we know that in ornamentals and other, that kind of rules how new products are developed. It rules how costs are managed. It, all of it. So.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, that's what a cool job she has. I mean, you as well, but
No, and she's doing an exceptional job, and yeah, I think that is certainly a unique role. So,
yeah, very cool. Well, also kind of leading into what we were going to talk about, with you guys being in the greenhouse, rains being crazy, struggling for light, what do you do?
Yeah, we so going into 2023, we rethought about our total footprint in relation to cost, in relation to the kind of latent infrastructure potential to increase yields. And I decided to recommend that we downsize slightly and optimize that reduced footprint. And so we took off 23,000 square feet. So we're not running in the greenfield greenhouses anymore, which I believe is a very smart decision. And we've moved all those fans, we've moved all of those lights into the Salinas facility. And we've also been able to, because of taking that facility offline, we've been able to get a $1.3 million rebate, which is paid for me to outfit an entire acre with twice as much supplemental lighting. And so we've done things like that. We're soon to install supplemental CO2 in this now reduced footprint, capturing it as a byproduct from our boilers. And we're increasing airflow in all of our ranges, as well as exhaust, to better manage VPD and heat and humidity. And so in my mind, it's with the weather, with the market, it's optimize and have more control. And at the same time, increase your yields. Don't, try to manage your costs so that increase in yield just continuously dilutes your cost per pound. And so that's what our focus has been, and it's paying off. I will say I wish some of these things would get installed faster and we'd see the result quicker, but we're getting there. So
yeah, hurry up and wait.
Yeah, right.
Well, awesome. So, okay, well, why don't you introduce the project we'll be going under together, and tell us why it's important to do this, and what it could potentially mean, and yeah, just all the details you can.
Yeah, no, I think our discussion up to this point is a great segue now into this. I worked with Fluence for quite some time, worked with you with lighting, as well as, at Battlefield and controlled environments with propagation. have a decent understanding of lighting and its impact on crops. And the more I grow cannabis, the more I challenge my thinking about it compared to how we approach other crops. In ornamentals, it's about growing a crop which fits an aesthetically acceptable spec for Lowe's or a big box retailer. Whereas cannabis, yes, we have an aesthetic, appreciation, not quite quantified, in my opinion, as well as it should be in the industry, but we're growing a plant for yield. And we didn't necessarily do that in ornamentals. And so when we think about how we apply light, I think there's a different way to think about it now, especially when growers are trying to optimize and increase their revenue potential per square foot. And so, the traditional model for designing lights for cannabis is just based on a simple two-dimensional horizontal plane of light intensity above the canopy. And, the reason we come at it from that angle is obviously plants are evolutionarily adapted to take light in from above. And we use the metric of leaf area index to calculate this. And, but at the same time, I was talking with Dr. Bugbee at Utah State, and they threw out some results which just really kind of made me think about this. And they said that they took some data where they stripped the plants of all the leaves later in flower and measured photosynthesis, and that the flowers alone contributed 30% of the total photosynthesis of the plant. And I was like, wow.
I've been wondering what that number was. I knew he was working on it, but I didn't hear the results yet. 30%.
30%. And so then I was wondering, okay, well, in the other crops I've grown, in ornamentals, let's say poinsettias, which I know, you and Jim are very well aware of, bracts are photosynthetically active until they turn color. And then even, green tomatoes are photosynthetically active. And so hence a lot of the inner canopy lighting in tomato production. But we're not thinking about that in cannabis. And I think part of the reason we're not is because it's flowers, and not many other crops, in my opinion, have really photosynthetically active flowers that we're focusing on channeling light to. And this is interesting because the flowers take up a significant amount of surface area too. And if they're contributing up to 30% of the total photosynthesis, then we need to transition to what I'm calling more flower direct cultivation strategies. And we may need to think about lighting not necessarily in a, coming straight down in the form of rays, but more of a diffused three-dimensional approach with lighting to optimize the yield potential of the crop. And so that's to kind of segue into the project that we're doing. I'll share that for whoever's watching, Allison and I, CRC and StateHouse, along with Kronos, Lasse, head of R&D there, and a potential other MSO, have partnered together to be the inner canopy light validation group to validate what we think is the potential here. And I'm kind of excited about it. It's a whole new approach, and yet it makes total sense. And when you think about diffusion and how greenhouse, manufacturers have improved glass for better diffusion, and all these things that have supported lights just trying to accumulate more light, this approach for cannabis could be a game changer for different biomass ratios during production, total photon capture and yield. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what we can learn through doing this.
Yeah, back when I joined the cannabis industry, it was like a million years ago, I could remember walking into the grow and late in the flower, almost all of the leaves being stripped, and just thinking, oh my God, what did you do to the plants? And it's just cool to see how cultivation has been, it's been done successfully, and things were done for a reason that, us coming from other plants, plant production systems, like you said, you're not necessarily looking for yield. And so, scientifically, from our training, it didn't line up. Yeah. And so with studies like Bugbee's coming out, it really it validates what the legacy market has been doing, to a certain extent. And so that's pretty cool, and it makes perfect sense to, the bottom buds that don't receive as much light from the top. Well, hit them from the sides.
Yep.
So yeah, no, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, and I can completely appreciate, you saying that we're getting to a point now where we're starting to validate a lot of these legacy practices. And, when I spoke to the team here and some other growers, when they would make me aware that they would completely strip the plants, their thought was that when you take the leaf away, the plant will just use its energy to then go into the flower. That's not what's happening. Right now, we're talking about, getting light directly to the flower. Okay, here's the validation of what's happening and the mechanism behind it. Yeah. And so it's taking both these worlds to come together to make this work. And I know you've been dealing with it for quite some time and debunking quite a few things. And this has been fun for me too to do this. But maybe what I can do, if you're okay with it, is I can show the fixture we'll be filing.
Yeah.
And let people see what that looks like. I know there's multiple lighting companies coming out with different intercanopy fixtures. We were approached by a group called Grow Light Design, and they were willing to provide fixtures for us all kind of for free, as they should, in my opinion, for us to validate ourselves. And I also think their form factor is it's practical, and I'll show you why that is. But it kind of helps us visualize this three-dimensional approach. Can you see it okay? Okay. I think you're on mute too, just FYI. But so the fixtures there on the right, and here's just a schematic of what the micromoles per meter squared per second come out to, light intensity. I think there needs to be a little bit more work on how we go about actually measuring light intensity in a system like this, where it's coming from both sides or all around. But if plants are trained according to how both you and I feel they should be, the plant should flower right between those two top rows of lights. And if we're focused on mainly, the upper half profile of the plant now getting light from the sides, this fixture is incredibly practical. And that's why it's fascinating compared to some of the others that are just strip lights down the sides like we see in tomatoes. And I think this type of fixture also, in regard to production convenience and practicality, you can hook trellis on top with their new design, I believe, and the sides open to get in. It can move on top of a bench instead of hanging from the ceiling. There's some things about this specific fixture that I feel are quite practical compared to the others out there. But yeah, I think our plan right now is to answer the question: if we have a plant that's growing under only top lights, and it has, let's say, a DLI of 30 during flowering, could a DLI of 30 split between this fixture and top lights, just the top lights reduced a little bit, possibly allow us to capture more photons, possibly allow us to get more light directly to the flowers, increase total yield, while at the same time increasing our premium to small ratio and flower to trim ratio? And for the individuals who are watching, I think that's going to be the focus of our group, are those two treatments, right? Asking the question at the same DLI with a slight change of distribution in light from above versus the side by side. Where's the trade-off here? Right. And yeah, I'm excited to see what this comes out to. And I don't know. I haven't spoken. Have you spoken with any other lighting groups on how they're measuring this? Because we have it set up in our chambers, and I have a quantum sensor, and we're going through and we're measuring, and I'm like, gosh, how do I calculate DLI in a three-dimensional cube?
Yeah. No, that's a tricky one. Yeah, because it's that plus, at the time, what leaves are in front of the other.
Yep.
So yeah, that's going to be tricky, but I think we can give a good representation. I like how we've came about the study and, having different scenarios depending on how the certain groups already grow, as far as pot size, plant size, veg time, even light and intensity. I think it'll give a good idea for different types of growers. Ones that grow small plants, can kind of look at this part of the study, and those who grow big ones. I know some of our growers in this test run do bigger plants, so that could be a little more validating for them. But I can't see how this wouldn't show something. Increase it by 50% yield, maybe not, but certainly maybe, like you said, the small to the premium to larf, the premium to shake, or the parts that usually end up going to a biomass, certainly could make those buds a lot more aesthetically pleasing, dense, and sellable for a smokable flower.
Exactly. Yeah, and I like you made a good point. Like, it's not going to be a significant increase in total yield. But at the same time, when we think about, okay, if I can sell a premium pound for $950 and I can sell a small pound for $300, and with this, I may not increase my grams per square foot, but I increase the ratio of premium to small, revenue's automatically gone up,
right,
per square foot. And so that's what I'm very interested to see. And then at the same time, I mentioned flower direct kind of being this approach. It supports everything in regard to homogenization of VPD and CO2 near the flowers, right? And we start talking about better airflow, flower direct and within the canopy.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of things make sense. We just don't have the data yet. One other thing I'll mention, which we both briefly discussed, was, I feel that cultivation performance in cannabis is not quite adequately defined yet. I think a lot of groups have their own way of how they determine the performance of a system. And, I think that needs to be broken out into two facets moving forward. One of those being obviously the grower and the expertise and the understanding of how to manage a facility, manage people, plant growth, etc. But then you also have kind of the latent facility yield potential of just bones of a facility. And, you have to separate those two things so that you can understand, okay, what can the facility do to maximize yield, manage the environment? And one of the key metrics that is tied into that is your photon conversion efficiency, which nobody's talking about. How efficient are you at converting the light or the energy that you have into biomass? And I feel that this will, reveal opportunities in that regard, to increase your photon conversion efficiency, which is a unit of grams per mole of light. But yeah, at the same time, I feel that the industry still has a while to go before we can all sit down and properly and adequately talk about cultivation performance among multiple different facilities, instead of just assuming every facility should be able to hit the same targets.
Right.
And I think it's strategies like this which can help certain growers increase, let's say, their photon conversion efficiency within a different system compared to other growers that maybe necessarily don't need it in a nice, tall, diffused glass Venlo greenhouse versus a retrofitted cut flower shorthouse. And so I'm excited to see technology like this come out, because it's at a unique time where it really can change the game for growers who don't have the capital to expand and, could just implement lights from the sides and completely change their revenue per square foot. So you can hear I'm kind of passionate about it, but yeah.
Well, what are the wattages for one of these units?
Okay, let me see. So I believe the efficiency is 2.3 micromoles per joule. As far as wattage goes, 208 watts power consumption per unit, 4x4 unit.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I think this is a startup company that probably could continuously improve on some of these metrics. But that's where they are today, I believe. So yeah, I'm excited to kick off our study and see if we can put some data behind some of these assumptions. And
Yeah. So we'll expect to have maybe you or Rachel on in, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, something like that, and tell the results and let everybody see what happened.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to. To your point, I like that the different groups possibly are we have the same treatments, but we're kind of going about it individually. So that if there is, consistent positive trends in the data, that's gonna really validate this. But yeah, no, I appreciate you letting me talk about it and coming on today. And I think hopefully for the individuals watching, us discussing the market and challenges are relevant to you. And yeah, if there's any way that any of us or all of us can communicate more about these challenges, even better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've got a good group that's willing to share and grow together because,
That's what we need.
That's what we need. And that's the fastest way to go forward and improve in every way possible.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thank you. And we look forward to having you on again.
Okay, cool.